I can even announce it, yeah, and then throw it on the table. In the force, we are going to make the spectator take the card we want. Let's look first at a very simple force, which is very effective, and we call it the Crisscross Force. The Crisscross Force, the spectator, deck is maybe shuffled, the spectator is asked to cut the card, we put the lower packet on top of that, and we give him this card, which apparently he cut to. Now, done in this way, it will fool a few people some of the time, but never all the people all of the time. So let's see how to do this in a clever way. First of all, it always helps to shuffle the cards so the spectators don't think that there's any arrangement in the deck. I'm going to use the Ace of Hearts here on the top. After the shuffle, it's perfectly acceptable and logical to have the deck cut. So I ask, please cut the pack. Spectator cuts the pack, and I simply comment, let's, or mark it here, or here. It's not necessary to make more comment. This packet can be put in any type of position over the other, as long as it's distinctly different. It's important to introduce a little pause. Arturo de Ascanio always distinguished between a positive insertion, that's little pauses that do help to make a slide more deceptive, and negative insertions which should be avoided. Negative insertion will be if I have a card selected and then I start telling a story which probably makes the spectators going to forget the card and then reveal it. It's much better to move the explanation, the introduction or whatever, the presentation to the before having the card selected, then have it selected and proceed to the revelation. So avoid negative insertion. Here we need a positive insertion. We need that the spectator forgets exactly in which way the deck was cut. Now, we use a verbal and also a body language strategy to further help the deception. When I go back to give the spectator the top card of the lower barrel, I say, the deck has been shuffled. I repeat the gesture I have done before, and it's true, the spectator remembers. Then I immediately go to the deck, and in the air, I repeat the action. I say, and you have cut. And what I really do, I do this gesture, which makes the spectator believe that he really cut this way. In reality, you remember, the packets have been inversed. But since it's true that he's cut, and it's true that he did this action, he will readjust his memory he has about this action. Now, we can proceed in different ways. You can ask the spectator to take the card. You can give it to himself. The important thing is, if it's possible, if the trick allows it, to replace the cut-off portion on top. So that will reinforce the fact that the deck was cut in the first place in this manner. That's a Crisscross Force. It's a very effective force. You can also, in the Crisscross Force, force one or several cards, or by having more cards, of course, on top, or by asking the spectator to take the bottom card and the top card, or just having to take the bottom card. Now, in an instance that you're not allowed to disclose the back of the card because maybe there is a message on it, maybe it has a different color, to do it that way and then ask him to take that card will effectively achieve the purpose. Another force which is often referred by the name of the cut deeper force comes from the creative mind of a gentleman whose name is Balducci, or the Balducci Force. And here is how the procedure looks to the spectator. We ask the spectator to cut a little packet and turn it face up, put it back. We ask another spectator to cut a little deeper and turn it back, and then we say, let's take the first card that is face down, and that's going to be the force card, our Ace of Hearts. Now here's a way of making this elegant. First of all, make sure that the spectator does exactly what is required to do. So it can be done in a demonstration moment. In this instance, I have the force card second from the top, so I have an indifferent on top. And I go through the procedure briefly for the spectator to say, in just a minute I'm going to ask you, sir, to cut a little packet. So you may do it like that. Of course, I have no idea which card you're going to cut to. To really make it random, please cut another packet. Yes, again, I have no idea which card you've cut to. Let's see. Let's look at the card afterwards that is not visible, you cut to. And that's going to be your indifferent card. Now, you can take this up, sweep up everything else, and the force card comes to the top. Not only has this exactly demonstrated how the procedure is, so minimizing mistakes the spectator can do, you have also cleverly delivered the force card to the top. Now you may think about different ways to justify why the deck should be cut in this particular way. And there are different ways of doing. For instance, you could ask a spectator, now please take your left hand, which is closer to your heart, and turn over a packet, and then take your right hand, which is closer to your brain, and turn over a packet. Or you can ask a lady to do one cut and the gentleman to do one cut. So there are different ways you can stage and justify this procedure and get to a very efficient and at the same time very easy to do force. There will be more forces in other chapters, and I mention them as we come to them. You know, card magic is very interesting discipline because it's hundreds of years old. 1371, we know of the first deck of cards. 1371, that's very old. So in the meantime, hundreds of people have come up with beautiful ideas. They have transferred the idea to the next generation and so on. But there has been an evolution, of course, in magic. You know, like hundreds of years ago, a magician would shuffle the pack like that and say, Ruth, please take a card. Now we don't do this. The modern magician goes a step further. Yes, he says, think of a card. Actually, most people will think of the ace of hearts, so they don't want you to act under such restrictions. So let's make it more difficult. There are 52 cards. So I'd like you to think of any number for 52. Maybe, so it's not too long between 10 and 20.
11.
What? 11? Good. So I'm going to count 11 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Did they do exactly what I'm saying?
Yes.
Good. Now, hundreds of years ago, they would say, please, Anna, look at the 11th card. Now, they don't do it nowadays.
Okay.
You know, it's more sophisticated. They say 11 is not a magic number, you know, because it has 2 digits. Magic numbers only have 1 digit. I didn't know until recently. I'm told, yes. So we need a 1-digit number. Let me see. 11. 11 is 1 and 1. So it's 2. That's an easy one. Good. Had you said 17, more difficult. Because so I'm going to count 2 cards. 1, 2. Had you said 17, I would count 1 and 7, 8 cards. So it would be another card, right? Good. Please look at the card. Show it to everybody at home. Show it to Ruth, please. Don't show it to me. Good. I put it back. Good. Great. Now, in former times, well, I'm going to shuffle the cards even to make sure. In former times, they would have tried, you know, to look through the deck and find a card. Now, we don't do this nowadays. No, we go one step further. We divine the card directly mentally. Yes. You think of the card?
Yeah.
Yes. Wait. I got it. It's a black card. It's not a red card. It's not a club card. It's a spade card. It's a very high spade card. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yes. Ace of spades.
That's it.
Good. Very good. Now, at that point, you know, in former times, we would stop and people would be astonished. But nowadays, we have sophisticated audiences. They say, that's curious. So we go one step further. Yes, we're going to try and find out where that ace is because it's somewhere lost in the pack. So how do you find a card which you don't know where it is?
I don't know. I have
Well, you
no
call
idea.
You call them like a person. You call the card by its name. So it's, what was that? Ace of spades? Okay, well, I call it. So I spell the name, you know. Ace, A-C-E, of spades, S-P-A-D-E-S. Ace of spades. Here it is. Correct?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Well, that's where they would have stopped normally. But nowadays you go a step further. You say, look, this is a spade card. Could have been a heart, a diamond, or a club. I go over this and look, all the cards over here, they're all spade cards. And they're all arranged, look at that, in numerical order. Wow. But doesn't win your game. So that's why you go over here even a step further and you have all the aces.
Cool. Wow.
Well, in former times, I mean, you would stop here, but nowadays you go a step further. Yes, I'm telling you. Look, Ruth, I'm going to ask you, please say stop whenever it pleases you.
Stop.
Stop. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to put the card over there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes? They're all the cards. Different cards. It's not the card, it's the artist. If you want to win, the best hand at poker was that. Oh, I know. It's a royal flush.
Wow.
And spades.
That's amazing.
Well, you know, I think even nowadays we cannot go further than that, so we stop here. Further than that is the very clever conception of Canadian amateur magician Stuart James. Now, it does require a little setup. That's the price to pay. There's always a little price to pay. And please follow along. It's very simple. First, we have the spade cards. In our case, it's the spade cards from 2 to 7. Followed by 4 aces. The order of the aces doesn't matter, except for the last, which has to be the ace of spades. That's the ace we are going to force. And then it's followed by another 4 cards, which make up the 4 cards together with the ace of the final royal flush. Okay, all of that goes on top of the deck, and as you could see in the performance section, we use in-jog control to keep the order and the position of the top stock. So the reason I picked this trick is not only is it a good trick, but it also illustrates a force that I didn't explain in the technical part, which is a force referred to as a 10-20 force. Now, it's a force that normally you will have to say to the spectator, please say a number between 10 and 20, which of course is quite suspicious. What kind of restriction? I apply a similar procedure, a similar psychology as you already saw me do in Think Stop, yes? And that is that I start by saying, I'm going to ask you in just a minute to think of a card. It's important that when you use this ploy, as I used it before, that you tell the spectator in just a minute. Because if you say, please think of a card, some spectators will immediately think of the card, and they don't get it out of their heads, and then afterwards they will think that card rather than the one they need to think. So it's good to say in just a minute. And then I will use the same strategy used before by saying, oh, most people think obvious cards, so let's do it differently. There are 52 cards. So that's the step that will lead me to the number limitation. There are 52 cards, so you could think of any number between 1 and 52, actually not to make it too long. Let's make it between 10 and 20, okay? So you see how step by step I get to that point rather than going directly up to the spectator and say, name a number between 10 and 20. So regardless of what number the spectator names, as long as it is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, or 19, this force will work. Let's go through it, for example, thinking 12. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now if you look at your cards, you will see that the ace ends up, in this particular example, the 3rd position from the top. Now, I have to lead to the next step, which is, if it's not done well, obviously mathematical. If you say, okay, now let's add 1 and 2. So have to use a little piece of humor at this moment and say, but you know, magical numbers, of course, are never are 2 digits. They're always 1 digit. So 1 and 2 is 3. So a little humorous way, you watch the presentation again, because there you can see the good timing. And so I count down 3 cards. And it was very important at this point that I emphasize, had you thought of 17, I would obviously count more cards, in this case 8, which is very misleading, because it would work the other way, because you would have another number of cards and another arrangement, of course. So in any case, in each case, the spectator does get the 4th card, which is the ace of spades. The cards are replaced, go back on top, and now I do another in-jog shuffle to retain the top stock. Well, from here on, the whole thing is self-working. Actually, the whole thing from the very beginning is self-working if you accept just the in-jog control. So I divine, that's the first effect, the card mentally. Then I spell it out. So remember, we do have 3 aces, and then we have, yes, the flush sequence in spades following. So I spell A-C-E on one side and spades S-P-A-D-E-S. Then I resume saying ace of spades, you know, to justify that I'm turning over the next card and not the last card of the deal. So it's a little positive insertion. Say ace of spades, here it is. And I throw it center stage. So then, following the presentation further than that, I reveal all spade cards. As usual, it's a good idea to place the cards in such a configuration that the spectator can see both indexes, so they are not standing on their head. And next effect are the 4 aces. At this point, on top, we are left with the cards that will complete the royal flush together with the ace of spades. Now, as far as we've gone now in the course, we would use the Crisscross Force to force the spot. I used, if you watch the presentation again, a different technique which is going to come a little later, also to whet your appetite. It's the River Force, where I go like this. Spectator stops me at some point and I somehow manage to get to this point where the royal flush is sitting. So as I said, in this case you would use the Crisscross Force like that. Just resume in 3-4 seconds what has happened until now, because we need a little time delay here, a positive insertion. And then I separate the pack, deal 4 cards at this point, saying, but of course, this is the best hand in poker, and it's a royal flush. And there it is. So that's further than that.